All right. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday evening Bible study. And I contend there's no better place to be on a Tuesday evening like that of being in church to study with God's people. Those of you that are joining us via social media, whether it be on YouTube or through Facebook, it's great to have you with us as well, whatever time you might be watching this presentation. And please, just tonight during the course of our study, if you have any questions or anything that you would like to interject or add, raise your hand, and I would be more than happy to engage conversation with you. And we are at Vision Church here in Lake Worth, Texas. And I contend that there's no better church to be in Lake Worth, Texas. And if you are looking for a church home, can I strongly emphasize and also encourage you to check out Vision Church, Vision Assembly of God here in Lake Worth, and the church is located at 4024 Dakota Trail. And so anyway, let's begin tonight. And I want to thank Pastor Doug for having me. This is, I think, the second time I've been back in this part of the building with you here in the fellowship hall for our evening Bible study. I want you to turn with me in your Bibles to the New Testament epistle of 1 Peter. Now, I don't know what Pastor has said to you regarding the kind of ministry that I have. I do what is called apologetics. I'm sorry for stepping out of the screen, but I'm stepping back into the screen. I do something called apologetics, and I'll explain what apologetics is here momentarily. I suppose the best way to give you an idea is by looking at the late Charlie Kirk. He would go onto college campuses and he would speak a lot about politics, a lot about the social issues of the day, but he would also interject and undergird everything that he was teaching and discussing with a presentation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I'll actually be at Clemson University and the University of South Carolina and Delaware University coming up. And I'm grateful that God opens these doors for us. And just pray that and we're in a volatile time. You understand that. And the situation that occurred just 1 month ago, interestingly enough, has opened up the doors that previously had been closed, and young adults are beginning to ask questions that they had not asked before. And so God is raising up an army of apologists to go into these university campuses and declare the gospel, and do so with resolution and with clarity so that the questions that a generation has can in fact be answered. So let me begin tonight. The name of my ministry is AMPed, and that is not just some clever little name that I came up with. It's actually an acronym, and it stands for Apologetic Ministry, and then it gives to you the purpose of our apologetic ministry. Apologetic ministry, preparing educated disciples. My goal is to send young men and young ladies back into their respective high schools, junior high classrooms, university classrooms, equipping them and giving them the tools that they need to engage in conversations that are meaningful, dialogue that ultimately brings about eternal results. And so that is what I am here tonight to discuss with you, apologetics. And you may have heard, how many have heard the word apologetics before? It's an interesting thing, and of course you're so blessed to have Pastor Doug as your pastor, as your shepherd, because you cannot even begin to understand the number of pastors out there that have no idea what apologetics even is. I've been to district councils and sectional fellowships, and when I pass out my business card or I set up my display stand and begin advertising my ministry, I will actually have pastors come to me and say, "What are you apologizing for?" when I speak about biblical criticism, they will say, "Why are you criticizing the Bible?" That's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous because apologetics is a New Testament principle. You find it over and over again. I think of the Apostle Paul on Mars Hill, and he engaged in conversations and dialogue that were meaningful. You find it time and again in Scripture where we are called to engage others and in doing so defend the faith. And so let's understand tonight that apologetics, number one, is a very specific discipline. And it is applied to any number of fields, specifically the field of law. And so when it comes to apologetics, let's understand that it really originates, at least our contemporary understanding of the word, in ancient Greece. It goes back to the year 399 BC, and the date was February the 14th. On February the 14th of 399 BC, a man by the name of Socrates was accused by a man named Miletus of committing two very grievous infractions against the Athenian culture, against Athens. Number one, he was accused of corrupting the morals of the youth. And number two, he was accused of impiety toward the gods of Greece. He was not devoted to the gods of Greece, and it was said that he was corrupting the morals of the youth. And I put this post on Facebook last month. I said, just as they killed Socrates, they killed Charlie Kirk. And then underneath it, I put, because the students were listening. Because the students were paying attention. And so Socrates is charged with these two specific crimes. Another man steps forward, and his name is Anytus, and Anytus prosecutes the case. Lycon is a demagogue. He is funding and pushing. And so ultimately, Socrates is tried before a jury, and not of 12 of his peers, but 501 of his peers. And the verdict came back. 281 said that he was guilty. 220 said he should be freed. And because the sentence was death, and because Socrates was found guilty, the next day, February the 15th of 399, he was given a cup of poison hemlock, and that evening he drank the hemlock, and he was killed. Capital punishment. We know that a guy by the name of Plato, let me give you the next slide. This is actually a picture of the trial that took place. And we know that Plato, you've heard the name Plato as well, he actually documented this trial, and the name of the writing is The Apology of Socrates. It's only 43 pages in length. It's relatively short, but he gave the defense. That's what the word apology means. From the original Greek language, it wasn't to express sorrow and say, I regret what I did or said. An apologia was a defense. And so our foundational text for apologetics is taken from the writing of 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter and the 15th verse. And here in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 15, now notice first of all that Peter is going to qualify our defense of the faith. He begins by saying, sanctify the Lord God in your hearts. That is the motivation for everything that we do. There was a world-famous apologist that I had the privilege of dialoguing with and interacting with it wasn't very frequent, but it happened enough that it impacted my life. And this apologist has since passed away. And if I called his name, everyone in the room would probably recognize the name of Ravi Zacharias. And Ravi Zacharias told me something one time. I'll never forget it. He said, we are not here to win an argument. We are here to win a heart. What is the motivation for what we do? We are not here to win an argument. We are here to win a heart. And that's why Peter said, first of all, check your heart. Sanctify it before the Lord your God, and then always be ready to give a defense. Always be ready to give an apologia or an answer to every man that asks you about the reason for the hope that you have. And when you give the answer, don't do it with arrogance, don't be haughty, but do it with meekness. Do it with a good conscience. Are you all out there with me as we're sort of taking out of the start gate tonight? The bottom line is this, ladies and gentlemen. The American church in 2025 has failed the Gen Z generation. We have failed them. The statistics are overwhelming. We have also failed the millennials. And the reason that I say that is because of this. I looked at research from the Barna Research Group, research that came from the Pew Research Center, as well as Lifeway. And every one of these highly credible research firms all concluded the same statistic, and that information stated that 3 out of every 4 self-identified Christians between the ages of 18 and 29 are going to leave the church upon entering into university or upon graduating from high school and leaving home. 3 out of 4, 75% of our kids are leaving the church, and the statistics say that one of those 4 will come back at some point in their lifetime. That is to tell me that we're losing half of our kids and our grandkids from the faith, and in my mind, that is a catastrophe. I'm 55 years of age. I had no intentions. My first 15 years of ministry were spent living in a travel trailer, living out of a suitcase in hotel rooms. I was an itinerant minister, and so in 2005, I took a pastorate. And it was nice being at home for those 15 years, sleeping in the same bed every night, laying down on the same pillow, eating out of the same refrigerator. It was nice being home. But when I saw these statistics in the year 2020, I determined that the need was also the call. I did not need to have a confrontation with the Archangel Gabriel, or Michael rather. I didn't need to have a conversation with Gabriel. I didn't need some angelic visitation on the Damascus Road to understand this need is so great. I need to rise up and do my part in trying to win back the kids and the grandkids, your kids and your grandchildren that are going to university and walking away from the faith. So God has opened up a lot of different doors. I'm not going to take time to go through the universities that I've been to. Incidentally, this is a shameless plug, but we do have an a web page. And on that web page, I've got videos, I've got articles. Also on that web page, you can read our monthly magazine. I put out a magazine every month. It's 16 pages in length, full color. And I do one thing in that magazine. I answer questions. I answer the questions that I receive from these college students each and every week. I'll give you an example of one of the questions that I recently answered. It came from a young man, and initially when the young man asked me the question, I thought, this guy's just pulling my leg. This guy's just a smart aleck and sarcastic. But I quickly realized he had a church background, and he said to me, Jesus actually endorsed the LGBTQ community. I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to say, and you made a proposition. Now back it up, substantiate your argument. And he went to the Gospel of John, and he so butchered basic English. And again, I thought the guy was pulling my leg. I thought he was just being sarcastic, and I quickly discovered he wasn't. He said, when Jesus stood at the grave of Lazarus and cried out, "Come forth," or "Come out." He was telling everybody everywhere, you have the right and the freedom to express who you are. I thought, you have got to be kidding with me. But it's a strange thing how these kids have had their faith so deconstructed that they've arrived at these erroneous conclusions. And so let me tackle that for just a moment. It's something called deconstructionism. How many have heard the word deconstructionism? It's a relatively new phenomenon that is taking place in the church. Write these things down if you're taking notes, all right? It is deliberately deceptive because it misrepresents the evidence of Christianity. Let me say this about faith. We misunderstand what Christian faith really means. Christian faith is not diving into the deep end of the swimming pool hoping that maybe you can swim. Faith is always attached to truth. And the truth of which I speak, I don't have time to go into truth or Aristotle's 3 laws of truth, but my faith is not based on a Bible story I heard in Sunday school 45 years ago. My faith is established on the historical credibility and reliability of the Scriptures and also of the life of Jesus Christ, found not only in the Gospels, but also found in extra-biblical information. Are you still out there with me? All right, just checking. So what's happening is this. Deconstructionism is better known as progressive Christianity. There's a guy on Facebook right now. I mean, he's one of the worst progressives, I think, on the entirety of Facebook. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to war with him. I'm going when he puts posts out there that says the Bible actually endorses abortion, and he said that he said our children should be exposed in elementary school to drag queens and other people who embrace alternate lifestyles. I thought somebody needs to push back, and so I've been in a media war with this guy out in San Diego, California. He is a progressive Christian. And the problem with progressive Christianity is it misrepresents the truth, it dismisses the evidence of the Scriptures, and ultimately it is causing students to renounce their faith. Our kids go off to their freshman semester at university in the month of August, and by the time they come home for Christmas break in December, they've renounced their faith. I can't tell you the number of mothers and grandmothers that have come to me with tears streaming down their cheeks, and they say, "Billy, we sent our kids off to university, and within 4 months, their professor completely dismantled their faith." And the strange thing is this. College professors should have one agenda, and that is educating the student, but they have a different agenda, and that is dismantling their faith, and in the process, undermining the foundation upon which this republic was established. If you want to change America, you've got to change its moorings, which happen to be the foundation of Judeo-Christianity. Am I making any sense up here? Okay. So here's the problem. Here's the problem. Our kids are defenseless. And I say they're defenseless because we in the church, and especially those of us in Pentecostal and charismatic circles, have emphasized that our kids have an experience with God without ever giving them the understanding and the knowledge they need to take the experience throughout the rest of their life. Let me say it another way. The heart cannot ultimately accept what the mind doesn't understand. The heart will never ultimately and completely accept what the mind cannot understand. And so tonight, I'm here to speak to you about your worldview. We're 22 minutes into this, and I'm giving you my topic for the night. I'm here to discuss with you the subject of a worldview because everybody's got one. And if you want to know what a worldview is, it's a fundamental understanding of your surroundings. It is the lens through which everything in life is viewed. All right? And I want to say this, it may come across, and I don't mean to be controversial unnecessarily, but I believe that most Christians do not live a life through the lens of a Christian worldview. I think most Christians compartmentalize their faith. My job's here, my family's here, my relationship with my spouse is here, and my faith is over here. That is not what Christianity is about. Christianity is the prism or the lens through which we are to view everything in our lives, because our worldview, number one, it's going to affect how we gather information. Number two, it is going to influence our understanding as it pertains to the way the world works. And then number three, our worldview is going to influence the way that we should live our lives. All right? All right. So what is a worldview? A worldview is very simply this. It is how you interpret information. I'll give you an example. The neighbor next door runs over, you're standing in the front lawn, and the neighbor runs over from next door and he says, I just saw a UFO, I just saw a UFO. The moment the neighbor says that, you immediately have your worldview activated and you begin processing the information they just spoke. And as you process, you're coming up with a hypothesis. All right, my neighbor says they just saw a UFO. So automatically you think, well, maybe the Chinese are flying another weather balloon over the country. Well, maybe it's an airplane. Well, maybe it is a spaceship. Or maybe he's got the blind staggers. He's just bombed out of his mind drunk. That is what I'm talking about. The worldview is how we gather information and how we then appropriate the information that we've been given so that we arrive at a certain conclusion. And the bottom line is this. Every one of us not only have a worldview, our worldview is comprehensive. Some of you swear by GM, others swear by Ford, others swear by Chrysler or Dodge. Others of you are all about Toyota, and others are about Honda. Am I right? We have a worldview. Do I want Chinese? Do I want Italian? Or do I want Mexican for dinner? All right? Our worldview. When I vacation, do I want to go to the beach or do I want to travel to the mountains? But here's the problem with our worldview. Most of the time, our worldview is just an opinion. And it's dangerous because our worldviews are dangerous because most of the time they are based on insufficient information. Am I making sense? Most of the time our worldview is based on insufficient information, but we try to establish and then we try to substantiate our belief system through emotionalism. And why is it that we so frequently displace logic and reason and try to live by what we feel instead? Feelings are faith. Feelings are logic. In fact, I will be at the University of Texas in Arlington on Thursday night. And there will probably be 70 or 80 Hindus there that I'll be speaking to. And I thank God for the opportunity. And there is an entire branch within Hinduism that says nothing really exists. Nothing is really here. They argue that they believe in nothing. Do you realize that if you say there is nothing, you actually have a belief system? And a lot of these conversations I have, I've got to be very gentle because these students will bring up self-refuting argumentation. So here we go. What is a worldview? Are y'all enjoying this tonight, or you're like, this is boring? This is what I do on these college campuses, so just hang with me. All right, what is a worldview? The word worldview was actually introduced during a philosophical movement in Europe called German idealism. It was a philosophical movement that took place in the 18th century, and the word originated all right, with this philosopher, a man by the name of Immanuel Kant. And Kant said idealism is the combination of two separate philosophical ways of thinking. Number one, rationalism, and then number two, empiricism. So let me explain this. Number one, rationalism. Rationalism says the only way that you can know truth is through reason. The only way that you can know truth is through logic or through common sense. Now, history is filled, the history pages are filled with examples of people that used what they believed to be logic and reason for their quest for truth, in their quest for truth, and ultimately their reason and their logic failed them miserably. All right, you had entire civilizations that believed the earth was flat, the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians, until the Greeks rolled around 400 years before Christ and said, no, the earth isn't flat, the earth is round. We thought, everything revolved around the earth, when in reality everything was heliocentric, everything revolved around the sun. But it seemed reasonable to believe that the earth was flat. And then, of course, you had a Polish priest in the 1500s by the name of Nicholas Copernicus, and then a guy by the name of Galileo in the 1600s, and those two men basically proved that the earth was not flat. Let me give you another example of why rationalism isn't necessarily the best way to arrive at the conclusion of truth. You will see on the right-hand side, the right picture, that is George Washington. He's 69 years of age. He has been out of the White House only for a few short years. Incidentally, the last three paychecks the federal government owed George Washington, they failed to pay him. And I don't know why I'm telling you this. Talk about a government shutdown. And so he ended up manufacturing whiskey. All right. I'm sorry, he was 67. He wasn't 69. But when he got left, 67, he was a big, strong, robust man. A powerful man. And so one night he went out and he was riding through the groves there at Mount Vernon. And it was a cold, rainy evening. And I'm sure a number of you know the story. He came back inside. He had a sore throat. And the sore throat would not lift. It would not alleviate. And so they made him a serum. The serum was made out of butter, honey, and molasses, along with dried beetles. And they gave him that serum. And they said, swallow the serum. Well, the serum didn't take away the sore throat. And when the serum failed to do its job, they called in the doctors, and the doctors decided that they were going to draw his blood. It's called bloodletting. And they drew out his blood, and the sore throat persisted. So they drew out some more blood, and the sore throat persisted. In total, they drew out 40% of his blood. And that's why, and that's how, George Washington died. It seemed to be rational. It seemed to be reasonable. It seemed to be logical. But at the end of the day, it cost this man his life. Now, for those of you that do believe the earth is flat, there's not a lot that I can do to help you. I meet people all the time. I have a business up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the business is with sports fans, and the business actually provides transportation for Pittsburgh Pirate and Pittsburgh Steeler fans from the parking lot to the game, and then from the game back to the parking lot. I'm actually from Pittsburgh. So I go up there in the summertime to oversee the business, and I use the monies from the business to help fund my ministry. So I run into this all the time. Man, I am so cold. It gets cold up there. I am so cold. I need a beer. All right, I am so cold. I need some whiskey. And so the fans go inside. They get their whiskey. They get their beer, and it gives them the sensation of being warm. And the reason that someone thinks alcohol makes them warm is because the alcohol causes the capillaries just beneath the flesh to constrict, and the constricting of the capillaries gives the sensation of being warm. Reality is the blood that is being constricted because of the alcohol is causing the internal organs to not receive the blood. Therefore, the core is actually colder. And instead of somebody being warmer because of alcohol, they're actually colder, even though reason would indicate that they're warmer. So rationalism doesn't always work. Are we still out there? Rationalism. So then there's empiricism. Empiricism says the only way that you can find truth is through what you smell, what you touch, what you taste, what you see, and what you hear. Incidentally, and this is an absolute fact, the color of your food affects the way your food tastes. No, it's not the food coloring that affects the way your food tastes, but it is what your mind thinks when it takes in that food. It shows you the power of the mind. And red 40 and blue 3 and yellow 2 and all those other carcinogen food dyes. My daughter she's got a master's degree in nutrition, and she runs the food bank for the Fort Worth Diocese for the Episcopal Church. Man, that's another story within itself. She goes head to head with those Episcopalians. And I don't know why I'm saying that. Forget I said that on Facebook and YouTube. They're going to edit that out. And but she's all, man, we can't have that food. It's got red dye in it, yellow dye in it, and blue dye in it. So the kids come over to Pap and Bubby's house. And when they come to Pap and Bubby's house, it is like open the floodgates. It's time for blue dye, yellow dye, and red dye. I can't believe I'm even telling you this. So anyway, empiricism says that you find truth through your senses. So we understand that truth is not necessarily physical. Sometimes truth is also psychological. And so I'm going to put in front of you something called the Ebbinghaus effect. And when you look at the Ebbinghaus effect, this is a perfect way of explaining how context determines perspective. Context determines perspective. Now, you see these, for the lack of a better term, two diagrams. All right? Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Each one of those configurations have an orange circle. Which one of those configurations has the larger of the two orange circles? Which orange circle is the largest? The one on the left or the one on the right? Neither one. You've got, well, yeah, they're the same size. But now let me ask you this question. If you would just glance at them, the appearance immediately says the one on the right is far larger than the one on the left. Perspective is always determined by context. We still on the same page out there? All right. So that's why here. Let's boil it down to where I'm trying to go tonight. Why does rationalism and empiricism fail? Because for all the rationalism and all the empiricism in the world, you will never be able to explain how a Jewish carpenter dying on a Roman cross could reconcile the entirety of the world back to God. You got that? It makes no sense. The Bible tells us it's a stumbling block to one group and it's foolishness to another. But to we who are saved, it is the power of God. What time does class go to normally? 8 o'clock. All right. Let me give you slide number 18, James Sire. He wrote a great book when it comes to worldviews. He called the book Naming the Elephant. And he wrote this in 2004. And he said everybody's worldview consists of two basic things. Number one, it consists of assumptions and also questions. Assumptions and questions. Everybody in this room tonight has things that they assume are true. But are they? When it comes to issues of assumption and issues of question, all right, most of the time it boils down to a moral matter. Here's where we are in America. What is right? What is wrong? Evolution or creationism? Of course, we're now in a place in America where matters of sexuality used to be issues of right and wrong. All right, assumptions and questions, but something really dangerous took place. And this is where the university students that I talk to are living right now. Something really dangerous took place in the 20th century. There was a thinking or a mentality that invaded our culture. And I won't go into the backstory as to why this thinking emerged. It really was the result of the failure of the League of Nations. I'll give it to you quickly. After World War I, the war to end all wars, the League of Nations was formed, and the League of Nations failed miserably to accomplish world peace. And so it was disbanded in 1945, 1948. The United Nations came into existence, and the United Nations is just as inept as the League of Nations. And so people had this great expectation after World War I had ended that world peace was going to be introduced. And when that did not happen, there was a cynicism. There was a skepticism that began to just blanket the world community. And from that was introduced this philosophy, here it is, called postmodernism. What is postmodernism? When the war to end all wars failed to bring about peace, and when the United Nations failed to bring about peace, people began to embrace this philosophy that simply said this: it may be true for you, but it's not necessarily true for me. That is postmodernism in a nutshell. What may be true for you is not necessarily true for another. Now, let me give you a quote by this guy, Harold Pinter. He won the Nobel Prize in 2005. Considered to be extremely intelligent, one of the leading voices, one of the leading influences in Britain. As I said, he was a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. And this is what he said. Now get a load of this. There are no hard distinctions between what is real and what is unreal, between what is true and what is false. A thing is not necessarily true or false. It can both be true and false. Now, we understand this to be gibberish. We understand this to be fundamentally and philosophically wrong. But the problem is our kids are being educated to believe this lie. What may be true for you isn't necessarily true for me, and what may be right for you may not necessarily be right for me. And when morality is now subjected to the individual, we completely lose discernment, and that's where we are in this society. So we walk around, and I have people say it to me, everyone's got their own truth. Everyone's got their own truth. Now understand, everyone has their own truth is an objective claim. Everyone's got their own truth. That would apply to a universal principle. Everyone's got their own truth. Here's the problem. Everybody's got their own truth. Do you understand if it's true for you but not true for me, then it can't be true on one account? Here's what I get. Here's what I tell the kids all the time, because they're high school teachers, and I look back to 11th grade biology. Day one of 11th grade biology, Regis Giles, my biology teacher, stands up and he says, we're going through the syllabus, and he says, if you're one of those people that happens to believe that some fairy up in heaven waved a wand and everything came into being, I can't help you. And so our kids are standing and, they're sitting in the classroom, and the professor or the high school teacher says, there's no such thing as truth. There is no such thing as truth. Everybody has their own truth. There's no such thing as truth. Now, if anybody ever says to you there's no such thing as truth, it takes 2 seconds, quite literally, to refute that claim. All right? Please, whatever you do, don't say, well, Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am. Please don't do that. If somebody says there's no such thing as truth, simply say to them, is that true? Turn the argument back on itself. It is a self-refuting argument. Are you still out there with me? All right. So once again, postmodernism refuses to distinguish between matters of opinion from statements of fact. I want to read that one more time. I just raced through that. Postmodernism refuses to distinguish between matters of opinion from statements of fact unless there's an agenda involved. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Objective statement or subjective statement? You're half right. It's both objective and subjective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but the implementation of that objective truth becomes subjective. Were you still out there with me? Hey, I've listened to multiple YouTube videos where conversations are being had on university campuses, and I understand this is going to be a little uncomfortable to say, but again, this is where we're living in America. I've upset a lot of people in churches. I've had some parishioners complain to their pastors after I was done with my presentation. Can you believe that? And there was a dialogue with students, and the statement was made that rape is always wrong. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? Rape is always wrong. And most rape, R-A-P-E, most of the students said, I cannot unequivocally say rape is wrong. I don't like the idea, but I cannot say rape is wrong because that is an objective truth claim. And anytime you throw the word always, none, or only into a statement, you have just made an objective truth claim. That is to say, rape is always wrong, because if rape is not always wrong, then sometimes rape is. And that's why that's where we are in America right now. It's a rejection of absolutes. Now, let me also say this. You may be listening to this tonight and say, "Well, no, Billy, I'm not a postmodernist. Well, why are you teaching this? I'm sure you're not a postmodernist, but I guarantee one of your grandkids is. I guarantee it. Guarantee one of your kids is, and you don't even know it. And the problem with postmodernism is this, and this is why they're leaving the church in droves, because postmodern thought is a complete and stands in complete contradiction to the claims of Scripture. Yeah, Matthew. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. 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 Absolute. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to say that twice. Mm-hmm, right. Yeah. Yeah. I was just doing some reading on the absurd argument the other day, but it's interesting you bring that up because I'm just beginning to do some research in that direction. Thank you, Matthew. Great point. Josh McDowell and his boy are just absolutely incredible. They're doing an amazing work. Were you anywhere near Biola? You're up in Northern California. Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's the problem with postmodernism. Jesus said, "There is no salvation under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved." There's only one way to be saved. Okay? That's an objective statement. That throws postmodernism right out the window. When Jesus said, "I am the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life, no man comes to the Father except by me," that is an objective truth claim. All right, here's another guy, Alvin Toffler. brilliant, way ahead of his time. I mean, 60 years ago, he was tapping into AI. He was delving into cloning and other kinds of communication fields. He was just a brilliant human being. But listen to what he said. Every person carries in their head a mental model of the world, a subjective representation of external reality. So the question is, how do we take our subjective representation and find objective truth? In other words, everyone lives their life by their opinions. What if your opinion is wrong? And I've discovered some things. I'm wrong a lot. I'm wrong an awful lot. Basically, what he's saying here is truth is what you make it. And as I said a moment ago, postmodernism subordinates truth to identity. I said this a few moments ago. I want to say it one more time. When the judgments of truth are based on individuality, there's a total loss of discernment. We can't say what is right, and we can't say. Here's the thing. Here's the problem in America. We say we can't distinguish between right and wrong. No, the problem is we can't distinguish between this and that. If you can't distinguish between this and that, you'll never be able to distinguish between right and wrong. Case in point right here. Now, this is what gets me in trouble. Okay? Now, I'm going to just be, that's appalling. That's appalling. Okay? But what is it that our nation now looks at something of this nature and says, how enlightened we have become? How can I look at something like this and say that's abhorrent, that's anathema? And then the other half of the country says, oh, we have arrived and we have become so enlightened. I'll take that off the screen. This guy, he was 432nd in the NCAA men's swimming. When you lose objective truth and everything becomes about individualism, all discernment is gone. This guy, 432nd in the NCAA men's swimming competition, but then he shows up transformed from William Thomas to Leah Thomas, standing 6'3" tall, and he wins all kinds of women's competitions in NCAA swimming. One of the events, he beat the ladies, everyone that he swam against, by 54 seconds. In fact, he beat this young lady during one race. No, he tied her one race. And they gave him the award. Notice she's got the award, he's got the award, but she has no award because they tied. And they told her backstage, they said it wouldn't look good publicly for you to get the award and us to shun her, him. I won't call him her. William Thomas is a him. So anyway, all right, here, how is this fair to Riley Gaines? That's who that is, Riley Gaines. I love Riley Gaines. Man, do I love Riley Gaines. She's got some moxie, man. Chutzpah, yeah, I know. I love that. She's got some chutzpah. I would love to meet her and her husband. I guess she just had a baby recently as well. All right, but here's the problem that I have. All right, I'm going to give you one guess who that is. That's Riley Gaines at 4 years of age, who would give up her summers, who would get up early before school, and then forego playing with her friends after school to dedicate her entire life to doing one thing, being the best swimmer she could possibly be. But because we can't discern between what is this and what is that, she is stripped of the award that she should have been given, and it's given to somebody who's living a lie. We don't even want to get me started on that. So anyway, I got to move on. I've got 8 minutes to finish. You still out there with me? Perspective. Oh, here's another one. Here's a great perspective. When it's all about perspective. When the Europeans braved the lashing waters of the Atlantic Ocean, they did so because they were searching for what? I'm looking for a phrase. Two words. They were looking for spices, but they were looking for the New World. All right? But when they got here, they found a group of Native Americans, Indians that were here. And to the Native Americans, there was nothing new about the world. To them, it was new. To them, it was just home. It's all a matter of perspective. And let me say this. Anytime truth is redefined, abnormalities become normal, and normalcy becomes hated. I want to say it one more time. Anytime truth is redefined, abnormalities become normal, and normalcy becomes hated. Now, I've got skin in the game. All right? I've got skin in the game. That's my grandson, Judah. Lives in Azle. He went to public school in Azle, and my daughter pulled him out, and he now goes to a Christian school in Azle. Came home, he was 7 years of age, and he says, Mom, what is gender fluidity? Now, this is Texas, man. This is Texas. And says, Mom, what is gender fluidity? My daughter was on the phone ASAP, calling the principal and calling admin, saying, I've sent my second grader to school, and instead of teaching him how to read, write, and do arithmetic, you're teaching him what gender fluidity is. I've got some skin in the game. And I'll be honest with you, one of the reasons I'm living out of a suitcase, it's not easy to live out of a suitcase. All right, it's not easy to travel all the time and then up in Pittsburgh running a business so I can generate enough money to go to these college campuses and have conversations with these young adults. But I'll be honest with you, people like this right here are what motivate me. See this lady? She advertises on TikTok. She advertises on all kinds of social media that do one thing. They target certain age groups. TikTok, Facebook. Who is she? She's a plastic surgeon in southern Florida, and this is what she specializes in. That's a young girl. Now, I've got a picture of the young girl with her mother, and her mother standing right next to her, smiling. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure who's got the problem, the mother or the young girl. The young girl, she's got gender dysphoria. She's confused. She needs help. She needs counseling. And listen, when what's in my mind doesn't make sense with how my body feels, I don't change my body. I deal with my mind. We talked about that last time I was here, if anybody remembers. I talked for an hour on the whole trans movement. I'm gonna move that because that just makes me irate. All right? We can't just live our own reality. All right? We can't be what we want to be. We have to be what we are. If I was living my reality, this is what I would be. As you can see, it's not what I am. I'm almost done. Christ, he was rejected by thousands of critics. They were hostile toward him. I mean, they hated him. But the one thing his critics could never accuse him of was being confused with his identity. Now follow me. And this is what he said. This is the worldview now. If you want to understand your worldview, I'm going to boil it down to John chapter 8, verses 12 and 14. Jesus spoke and said, I'm the light of the world. He that follows after me shall not walk in darkness, but they will have the light of life. And then Jesus said, even if I bear witness of myself, my witness is true, for I know where I came from and I know where I'm going. Now, I want you to notice something in this. All right? Jesus is making a tridactic claim. What I mean by that is very simply, if you want to know who you are and you want to know where you're going, it's imperative that you know where you came from. And when Madeline Murray O'Hare in the 60s took God out of the classrooms and they began teaching that we are the product of baboons mating, it's no wonder that the public high school became like a jungle. When you tell kids they're animals, don't be surprised when they act like animals. Jesus is saying, I know where I came from. I know where I'm going. Therefore, I know who I am. My witness is true. I know my origin. I know my destiny, therefore now I understand my purpose. Okay? I mean, I could spend an hour just on that tridactic claim. All right? Origin, destiny, and purpose. And let me say this. Only Christianity explains what something was created for. Science can explain how something was created, but it cannot explain why it was created. I walk into the kitchen and there's a chocolate cake on the table. I can look at it and biologically and through chemistry tell you how that chocolate cake came into existence, but I cannot for the life of you tell you why it came into existence. Grandma made it for me, maybe. Maybe my wife bought it to take it to the local food bank. I don't know. Only Christianity tells us why something was created. Let me say it another way. It may be the fate of a rusty hammer to end up in a landfill. But that rusty hammer was not created to end up in a landfill. It was created to pound nails. There's a difference between purpose and fate, and to understand your destiny, you must understand your purpose. And to understand your purpose, you must understand why it was Stanley made that hammer in the first place. Are we all on the same page? All right. Let me give you a great quote. C.S. Lewis. This is worth memorizing. All right? He said, I believe in Christianity. I mean, this is powerful. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. I'm not going to take any more time. How do I discover my worldview? We can go through empirical adequacy. We can go through logical consistency. We can go through experiential relevance. But at the end of the day, I am not a Christian because I was taken to Sunday school. I'm a Christian because I have evaluated the historic, scientific, and theological evidence that's been presented. And after looking at all the evidence, I have concluded that the Christian worldview is the most sound and the most logical. So here's the bottom line, guys. What are we doing with our faith? There is a great British evangelist, Gipsy Smith. I love that name, Gipsy. I'm going to tell my wife to change my name to Gipsy. And Gipsy said this. He said, there are 5 Gospels. 5. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Christian. There it is. There are 5 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Christian, but most people will never read the first 4. Powerful stuff. And then I'm going to close with another quote from a guy that I love, Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton. He said this, the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult, therefore left untried. All right? So anyway, thank you. I'm done on time tonight. But that is the importance of the worldview. And if you do have questions, any questions at all, you can just write down my email address and fire that question my way. And your question probably will end up in the magazine at some point in time. So, all right, that's it. I am done. God bless you guys. Thank you for being here tonight. And I'm grateful for Pastor. Thank you. For Pastor Doug allowing me to be here. And I'm not saying just fall on your knees and importune God and just God help them. But if we ever come to your mind, like I said, I'll be at the University of Texas in Arlington on Thursday. I've got Clemson, University of South Carolina, University of Delaware coming up. And then I'll be over at Ohio State University with Frank Turek. I don't know if you know who Frank is. Frank is the guy that wears the white hat, and he had the white hat on and the white shirt. He was the guy standing at Charlie's. Remember the assassination? There was a guy standing there with a camera, white shirt, white hat. That's Frank Turek. Frank's one of the, man. He just was just an awesome he's an awesome apologist. In fact, you might find this interesting. Charlie reached out to Frank 6 years ago, and he said, man, I need for you to disciple me so I am better equipped to answer these questions when the students ask me these questions on the college campus. And it just made me angry because when Frank was up there videotaping, social media blew up saying he was sending signals to the assassin. You read that? He was sending signals. Little did social media know that Charlie was like the fourth son to Frank. And in fact, Frank was in the SUV and they were doing CPR on Charlie. In fact, Frank spoke at Charlie's memorial. He's the guy that said Charlie's in heaven today, not because he sacrificed his life for Christ, but Charlie is in heaven today because Christ sacrificed his life for Charlie, if you remember that. That's Frank. And so Frank will be at Ohio State, and I'll be over there with him. And so God bless you guys. Thank you. And pray for us whenever we come to mind, because it's a big job that we have in front of us.